Hey, good afternoon to you. 306 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. Coming up, 4 o'clock, we'll be talking to George Hill, an FBI whistleblower, about how the feds have been tracking your spending activity. Go to a sporting goods store in the last year? They may very well be tracking you on that issue. More on that ahead. George Hill will react to that news. Dr. Ben Carson is with us today. Also, Secretary Ben Carson. He'll be with us at 4:30. A lot of chatter about his name. Could he be Donald Trump's running mate? We will ask. Coming up at 4:30. Don't miss our conversation with the good doctor. And Luke Rosiak from the Daily Wire is here at 5:30. We'll dig even deeper into what the Biden administration is doing, spending your money to create benevolent propaganda. That's the phrasing they use. It's amazing. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. As always, grateful to have your contributions on the show. I just want to point out, for those of you who enjoy the Vince Coglianese show, one, I'm grateful. Two, I'm going to be doing this for 6 hours tomorrow. I'll be filling in for Dan Bongino on his program tomorrow beginning at noon. So we'll kick things off at noon and go right through to 6 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to have a big day tomorrow. And I'll be very happy to have you ride along with me at whatever hours you're available. So thank you for that. So here's what's happening today. You do see the media is sharing the results of this Uvalde report out of the United States Department of Justice today. And the headline from the New York Times is Justice Department finds unimaginable failure in Uvalde police response. That's, I got to say, whatever words they use to describe all of this, it's an understatement. The police officers there utterly failed the children who were massacred inside of that building. 21 people left dead. And this is the way the Times writes about the DOJ report today. A near total breakdown in policing protocols hindered the response to the 2022 school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, that left 21 people dead, and the refusal to rapidly confront the killer needlessly cost lives, the Justice Department concluded on Thursday after a nearly 2-year investigation. The department blamed cascading failures of leadership, decision-making, tactics, policy, and training for the delayed and passive law enforcement response that allowed an 18-year-old gunman with a semi-automatic rifle to remain inside of a pair of connected fourth-grade classrooms at Robb Elementary School for 77 minutes, over an hour, before he was confronted and killed. Quote, the most significant failure, investigators concluded, was the decision by local police officials to classify the incident as a barricaded standoff rather than an active shooter situation, which would have demanded instant and aggressive action. Almost all of the officials in charge that day have already been fired or have retired. Attorney General Merrick B. Garland, speaking to reporters in Uvalde, said that the officers who converged on the school within minutes of the attack intended to storm the classrooms, but were told to stand down. Lives would have been saved, and people could have survived, end quote, if officers had acted quickly to confront the gunman, Mr. Garland said. He related a timeline of several critical moments when officers outside the classrooms could have halted the rampage, but did not take action. The main takeaway from the investigation, Mr. Garland said, was that officers who respond to an active shooting scene need to immediately enter the room to stop the shooter with whatever weapons and tools the officers have with them. So the story here is there's really not much new here. The Department of Justice conducts an investigation, they release a report, and they say there were cascading failures of leadership, decision-making, tactics, policy, and training. That was all obvious to all of us within 24 hours. Once you started finding out about some of these awful details on how those children were slaughtered and no one was coming to their rescue. Now, there were definitely people attempting to come to their rescue. There were a variety of police officers who wanted to get in, who were told to stand down by leadership. That's included in the DOJ report. There were parents who were trying to rush through the security line, armed, to get inside and to save the lives of their children. That happened. They were stopped from doing that. There were any number of people who were trying to get in there. And if I remember correctly, it was actually Border Patrol guys. So the BORTAC guys, remember this elite Border Patrol unit, they end up saying, we're going in. And they bring this thing to a conclusion well after well after the point at which it should have ended in the first place. And so a normal person's reaction to all of this is you need good guys to be able to fire back against bad guys as quickly as possible. That's the obvious answer to all of this. No matter who they are, we need to save the lives of these children. That's the essential mission here, and to prevent something like this from happening again. So take a wild guess. Take a wild guess what Joe Biden's response to the DOJ report is today. Well, it's the same thing that he releases after every shooting. It's that the citizens need to be disarmed. Once again, to summarize, the position of the White House today is that because the government failed the citizens need to be disarmed. You following the logic of this? It's a scam. So the government fails us, and then they rob us of power as a result of their failures? Screw you. Here's the White House statement today. I won't read the whole thing because it's tedious. No community should ever have to go through what the Uvalde community suffered. After the Uvalde shooting, the families of the victims turned their pain into purpose and pushed for the passage of the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the most significant gun safety legislation in nearly 30 years, which I signed into law. And I continued to take historic executive action, including the establishment of the first ever White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention. Congress must now pass common sense gun safety laws, Biden says, or whoever wrote this, to ensure that mass shootings like this one don't happen in the first place. We need universal background checks. We need a national red flag law, so the government can take guns away from people without due process. And we must ban assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. There's the big one. Disarming the public and taking away the gun that's least used in mass homicides, which is a rifle. Least used in mass shootings. It's pistols in gang shootings that are most frequently used in mass shootings. By now you know this, because we've had to go through this ridiculous, tyrannical debate how many times? The families of Uvalde and all American communities deserve nothing less, they claim. So Biden, you see, the families of Uvalde deserve to be disarmed, says Joe Biden. The longer we wait to take action, the more communities like Uvalde will continue to suffer due to this epidemic of gun violence. The government, it's worth pointing out, is not getting any more nimble. They're not getting more adept. They're not getting any better at protecting us. Although they do claim quite frequently that if only we turn over our liberty to them, that they will protect us. Hasn't worked yet. Have you noticed how safe everything's become as the government's gotten more power? It's crazy. It's like the purge out there. You have American cities right now where crime is not only rampant but excused. Totally excused. Which brings me to my next crazy left-wing crime story today. And it once again involves these Democrats who run these cities. Up in Boston this week, we find out about the saga of an illegal immigrant rapist who was taken into custody by local officials, and then Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that is ICE under the Biden administration, but these have, including people who would really actually like to enforce the nation's immigration laws. Immigration and Customs Enforcement finds out that this illegal immigrant rapist is in custody in Boston, and they send what's called a detainer request. I talked about this at some length yesterday. Not this particular story, but this phenomenon of sanctuary cities. And Boston, which is a sanctuary city, refused to tell ICE that they were releasing this guy back out into the public. And it is so horrifying to the guys, the good people who work at ICE. They released a press release this week, yesterday, declaring their outrage on a federal government Biden administration website. You ready? This is called ERO Boston. Arrests Haitian citizen charged with rape, indecent assault. Enforcement and removal operations, that's ERO. Boston apprehended an unlawfully present Haitian national on January 9th who was recently arrested by local police on charges of rape and indecent assault and battery on a developmentally disabled person in Dorchester. So this person raped and assaulted, an indecent assault, a developmentally disabled person. That's what we're importing into the United States. Thanks, Biden. ERO Boston lodged an immigration detainer against the Haitian citizen, but the Dorchester District Court chose not to honor it and released him from jail after his arrest on the sexual assault-related charges. So here's the quote from ERO Boston Field Office Director Todd Lyons, again, a federal employee, says, quote, disturbingly, and despite our filing an immigration detainer, this individual was released back into the community by the criminal court. The men and women of ERO Boston continue to protect the community from those who pose a real public safety threat to our communities. We remain strongly committed to protecting residents in communities by apprehending those who are not lawfully present in this country and pose a threat to public safety. This remains a central piece of our mission. They write that it was December of 2 years ago, December 2022, that the 31-year-old Haitian national arrived at the port of entry in Brownsville, Texas, where he was deemed inadmissible and then issued a notice to appear before an immigration judge with the Department of Justice Executive Office for Immigration Review in Boston. Okay, help me understand this. How does someone arrive at a port of entry? They ask to get into the United States. They are, quote, deemed inadmissible, and then they're released into the United States. How does that work? How can you be deemed inadmissible and then released into the place where you're not to be admitted? Make that make sense. In September of 2023, Boston police arrested him for rape and indecent assault and battery on a developmentally disabled person. And then, of course, you know the rest. The court didn't honor them. And so this is what the sanctuary cities are up to. The Boston mayor, what's her name? Michelle Wu? Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. So she's a crazy person, as you probably know by now. She went to Harvard, which explains a lot of this. She's the one who just threw a range of Christmas parties for anyone except for white people up in Boston. Remember, whites need not apply. Whites not allowed at the Christmas party. And then she was a little shocked that people thought it was a bad idea. What? And so Boston, just like all these other cities, when illegal immigrants are arriving, they're trying to now claim that there's a crisis going on. But the crisis is not that they're receiving too many illegals or that the borders need to be secured or that illegal immigrants are raping developmentally disabled people. That's not what they're concerned about. They're not raising that. They want more money. They want more federal taxpayer money. So you can hear it. Once you recognize that formula, every time you hear from Brandon Johnson in Chicago, or if you hear from Eric Adams in New York, or Michelle Wu in Boston, go down the list. Every time you see them in a radio or television appearance and they're talking about illegal immigration, you can hear it instantly. They've got their hand out asking for more of your cash. That's all they want, not a solution here. Because if they wanted a solution, Boston would have cooperated with ICE and handed over the guy who was raping developmentally disabled people right here in the United States of America. That's what they would have done. But they didn't, because they're a sanctuary city, meaning they're lawless. They're giving you the double-barreled middle fingers because you had an expectation that laws would be followed by America's cities. And they're saying, no, we don't follow the law here. In fact, we despise the law. And so we're not going to follow it, and we're going to release criminals back into the community. That's the state of play. So this is, there are lessons from all of this. They're quite the opposite of what the White House might say or Michelle Wu up in Boston might say. You know, when you get a shooting and the government is not there to save American citizens at that point should say, well, then I'm going to have to do it on my own. And in fact, I have the right to do it on my own. And when it comes to immigration, they're supposed to follow the law. They are not following the law. They're imperiling their community to advance their ideology. And that's cruel. 321. Laws either matter or they don't. Or they don't. And to the left, they don't. Love that they're always attacking Trump. Trump's going to break the law. You can't prosecute Trump. They're going so crazy today. Every day is another crazy day for the left. Let's take a quick call and then back to this issue of immigration, what's happening to our country. Dan's in Little Rock, Arkansas right now. Hello, Dan. Good to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for taking my call. Corey's the greatest. He remembered my name. I hadn't called in a while.
He's good at that.
Iron Throat Vince how many lozenges are you going to eat tomorrow?
Eat. I shouldn't. Yeah, that's bad for your stomach, I think. Too many lozenges go right through you. You don't want to do that. You got to be careful. But no, you're right. It'll be a long haul tomorrow. It'll be fine, though.
I was with you for the last 6-hour haul you did, and it was great. I don't know how you do it. It's pretty amazing.
Well, thank you, sir. So you're going to be with me tomorrow? Is that what you're telling me, Dan?
Oh, yeah, because I'm snowed in. I've been in the house since last Sunday. Us folks here in Arkansas are not prepared to deal with snow.
Is it?
We had a couple of inches, and things are kind of getting back to normal, but it's still 32 degrees outside.
How about it? See, I didn't realize Arkansas got tackled with enough snow to debilitate your movement. I didn't really. Okay, so you're going to ride out what's left of the snow. What's that, Dan?
It only takes a half an inch down here.
Yeah. Well, it's people give the southern areas grief for that. Oh, they can't handle a little snow. And what they miss when they say something like that is typically it's because you don't have the infrastructure to respond to it. You don't have all the plows and the trucks and everything ready to go to move it out of the way. The further north you go, the more military-style vehicles you have clearing roadways. That's usually the reason. Yeah. It's not that the South is full of snowflakes themselves. Oh, we can't handle the stuff. No, they just don't have the stuff.
Party people, but you only have so many trucks, and they clear the interstates.
Yeah.
It's a hilly, rural state.
Well, don't you worry, Dan. The World Economic Forum says that snow's disappearing soon, so you'll be fine. You'll be totally fine. They still don't want you to leave your house, though. Thanks, Dan. Tomorrow, as Dan's pointing out, I'll be hosting for Dan Bongino, and we'll keep going from noon to 6 here on WMAL. In a moment, I'm going to get into the Mayorkas impeachment, that proceeding continuing today, as Democrats insult a mother who lost her child to fentanyl. Good afternoon. 3:35 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on the show, George Hill, FBI whistleblower, will be with us at 4 o'clock. He's reacting to the news just out in the last 24 hours that the Biden administration has been looking for evidence of criminals among people who shop at Cabela's and purchase the Bible. Yeah. Holy cow. Yeah, George Hill will explain what's going on. Dr. Ben Carson is here. At 4:30, we talked to the former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development about the latest in that Donald Trump presidential campaign and how much more we might see of Ben Carson in a future Trump administration. And Luke Rosiak is here at 5:30 as the Biden administration spends your money to propagandize you. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yeah, the illegal immigrant thing is truly out of control. I saw the podcaster Dave Rubin. Is that the way to describe him? He makes videos on the internet. He's a popular guy. And he posted an image today to social media of what the TSA looks like at the airport he was standing in. And they are apparently allowing illegal immigrants to just cruise through security without any identification. There's literally signage up that says if you are an undocumented immigrant that you don't need identification, and there will be a photo taken of you, but it's optional. If you opt out of the photo, that's totally fine. What are these freedoms? Look, when I go to the airport, I got to be honest, I haven't done TSA pre-check yet. It's one of those things. Every time I go, I'm like, I got to schedule a time, but I'm bad at that. That's why I'm in radio. Every day is a new day. I just have to prepare for the thing that's ahead of me later that day. But every time I'm like, I got to sign up for the TSA pre-check. You know what? I'm an idiot. I should have just crossed the border. I should have just flown over to Mexico and then just, swam across the Rio Grande. And no TSA pre-check required. I just cruise right through. No identification, no photo, no burden. I'm good to go. You know those images? I've never had this experience, but you do see in movies and people have experienced it related. You know how guys will wait outside of a club, a very popular nightclub? They're all waiting to get in, but nobody's getting in except for the hot chicks. They're just like, hot chick, hot chick, hot chick. They're going in. All the guys are standing there. Hey, where am I getting in? The answer is never. You're just going to keep standing there forever. Unless you're like waving money around or something. You're just going to stay there. Yeah. So in this analogy, the illegals are the hot chicks, except they're not hot. and they're not bringing a tremendous amount of value to the club. It's just a disaster. So not sure it's an analogy. It's the exact opposite of what's going on. But it is happening. It is happening. Thanks, Joe Biden. Thanks, Joe Biden. Alejandro Mayorkas is being considered for an impeachment. I really hope he wins the impeachment award this year. He's deserving of it. He's been nominated for an impeachment. Let's hope he wins. He deserves to be kicked out of that job. Really, because he has abandoned us, betrayed us, announced that we're not going to deport people who are here illegally. It's bad. And so today there was a hearing on that subject. And during it, there was a mother who was testifying who lost her child to fentanyl. And in fact, she is suing the federal government, DHS specifically, for $100 million because she says that DHS failed to check her daughter's murderer for tattoos, MS-13 tattoos, which apparently the murderer had. So here's Tammy Nobles, the Virginia mother of Kayla Hamilton, testifying today.
On July.
Was it testifying today? Yeah. This is today's testimony. Excuse me. Here we go.
On July 27th, 2022, I received the worst news that a parent doesn't want to hear, that my newly 20-year-old daughter, Kayla Hamilton, was murdered in her own room and left on the floor like trash.
Sorry, and this was not a fentanyl killing. She was strangled to death by an illegal immigrant. Awful.
The illegal MS-13 known gang member brutally raped and murdered my daughter by strangling her with a cord and robbed her of $6. During the attack, Kayla called her boyfriend for help but went to voicemail. The voicemail of the murderer strangling Kayla was 2 minutes and 30 seconds long.
Ugh.
DHS employees failed to visually inspect the assailant by lifting his shirt to check for gang-related tattoos. Had DHS employees performed a visual inspection of the assailant's body, they would have seen MS-13 gang-related tattoos on his body, disqualifying him from entering the U.S.
Yeah. You know, we scan military recruits for tattoos. It's one of the things they do when they're recruiting people to join the military, assess what tattoos they have to assess, do they have gang affiliations, things that we should be concerned about before we hand a gun to this young man and ask him to serve his country. That's the kind of thing we do. Apparently not with military-aged males illegally immigrating across our border. Didn't check to see the MS-13 tattoo on the guy. He would go on to strangle an American citizen and kill her. Captured on that voicemail. Horribly. Here's more from Tammy Nobles today.
This could have been anyone's daughter. I don't want any other parent to live the nightmare that I am living. I am her voice now, and I'm going to fight with everything I have to get her story told and bring awareness of the issue at the border. If we had stricter border policies, my daughter would still be alive today. Nothing will bring my daughter back nor fix the pain of not having her here. But I want to prevent this from happening to someone else's child. This isn't about immigration. This is about protecting everyone in the United States.
It's awful. So that's a part of the rationale for why it's time for Mayorkas to go, because he has failed the American people, and he's failed in particular Tammy Nobles and all of the family members of Kayla Hamilton in their community. Additionally, Josephine Dunn, who had a 26-year-old daughter who died due to fentanyl, as I mentioned before, that was trafficked across the border. Here's Josephine Dunn today.
I flew from Arizona to meet him and face him and ask him why. And he's not here today. I did not know that until after I landed yesterday.
And he doesn't have the decency to even show up.
That is correct.
And talk to you personally.
Today is my daughter's birthday. I would have much rather been home with my poor husband grieving her. I didn't need to be here today. So whatever he's doing, I hope it's more important than that.
It's not. Whatever it is, it's not. It's not. Mayorkas refusing to be there and to face these mothers. Meanwhile, Daniel Goldman, the Levi Strauss heir who bought his way into Congress, Democrat, he decided to use his time today during this hearing to demean Josephine Dunn, the mother you just heard from, and tell her that she is out of her depth, that these are issues that are too big for her to understand, that she needs to settle down because adults are speaking, and she doesn't know what she's talking about. Listen to Daniel Goldman talk down to that mother today.
You are here really to share your story, but you're being used as a fact witness for an impeachment investigation, and obviously, given what your experience has been, you don't have the background to understand what a high crime misdemeanor is and how it relates to this. And so I hope that you're handling that okay.
I hope you're handling it okay, that you're too stupid to know what you're talking about. Said Daniel Goldman. What a ghoul that guy is. He's like, you don't have the background to understand what a high crime or a misdemeanor is. You don't even know what you're talking about. Daniel Goldman says to the mother, whose 26-year-old daughter was killed due to the fentanyl that Joe Biden enabled getting across the border. You have no idea what you're talking about, he says to her. Do you need more evidence of the contempt that these Democrats have for American citizens? They set the stage for the death of her daughter in the first place. She goes and testifies before Congress. They mock her and tell her she's too dumb to know what she's even talking about. Does Daniel Goldman have the background to understand what a high crime or misdemeanor is? Okay, you inherited some money. What does that have to do with anything? How does that suit you to be in charge of everything? So that's Daniel Goldman today. Anyway, that's and he wasn't the only one who is completely out of control. Eric Swalwell, you may know him as Fang Fang's boyfriend, was who called him Yum Yums? Oh, Troy Nels. Yeah, Troy Nels refers to her as Yum Yum. He gave her a different nickname. Here is Swalwell today saying we shouldn't be talking about Mayorkas' crimes at all. How dare we?
One of the questions earlier was asking a professor who came here to talk about immigration and the Constitution whether she would condemn Hamas's attack on October 7th. Everyone here condemns Hamas's attack on October 7th. But if that same member was asked, would you condemn Donald Trump's role in the January 6th insurrection, or would you condemn the people on this committee who called the January 6th terrorists hostages, an insult to the actual hostages, American hostages, in Gaza right now, he would take a pass.
All right, let's start with the analogy for a moment, what the comparison he just made. On October 7th, Hamas pours into Israel and rapes, beheads, kidnaps, massacres people. January 6, 2021, septuagenarian grandmothers go into the Capitol building. Some people break some glass. There's a guy who sits in Nancy Pelosi's office, puts his feet up on the desk. There's another guy who's carrying a lectern through Statuary Hall, within the velvet robes. There's a guy who's dressed like a Viking who walks onto the Senate dais and asks if it's okay if he's there, and the cops just ask him to be nice and not to mess anything up, and he promises he won't. They say a prayer together. The cops get into a shoving match with a bunch of the protesters inside the Capitol. Is that the same as the October 7th terror attack in Israel? Would you make a comparison between those two events? Obviously, January 6th was described as worse than 9/11 by Democrats. Do you remember that? AOC described every horrifying detail that she saw, and she wasn't even in the Capitol building. She was blocks away. So this is Swalwell today. They're like, they won't even admit how awful January 6th was. And I'm sorry, what are you even talking about?
He wouldn't want to answer the question. They couldn't answer the question because they won't condemn it. They don't want the fix. They want the fiction. If they were not...
he practiced that in the front of the mirror this morning over and over. It was difficult. He had to nail it. It was in between flatulence, so he had to get it just right. That was Eric Swalwell.
Willing to hold Donald Trump accountable for his impeachable crimes. I don't really want their hot take.
Time has expired.
I don't want their hot take
from New York
on Secretary Mayorkas.
Is recognized.
I don't want their hot take. He's too online. It's a hot take. That's what's going on here. Let's see. I've got Matt calling in from Rockville, line 3. Matt, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hey, Vince, just really quick about Tammy Nobles. It's pathetic that she has to say this isn't political, but she knows deep down that that's the only even remote chance that the people up there on the left would pay respect to her. And that was the only – she knows that it is politics, but she has to bite her tongue and say that it's not about it. Because the second that she does, they're going to say, oh, you're a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's such BS, and it drives me nuts that we have to somehow change what we say and how we say it just for the hopes that they even respect our side.
Yeah, these mothers are basically are asking Democrats in so many words to remember decency and to have some. And even when they're asked nicely, they just don't come around, do they, Matt?
It's so painful because they have to almost pander to the people who are helping cause this problem just to even acknowledge that there is a possibility of a problem.
Yeah.
And it's just it's so disheartening.
Yeah, totally disheartening. And then you get a scumbag like Dan Goldman who tells Josephine Dunn that she's out of her league. She doesn't even know what she's talking about and shouldn't be at the hearing.
It's terrible.
Yeah, big time. All right, Matt, thank you. I appreciate that. Jason's calling in from Kensington, as he does. Hello, Jason on line 2. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good day, Vince. How you going, mate?
I'm all right, Jason.
Yeah, this Mayorkas guy, I mean, in past, someone like that would be forcibly removed from office straight away and locked up. I mean, this guy has basically totally thrown America under the bus. And to sort of question this lady who's lost a sibling, and to sort of come back and say, you know what, you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, total disrespect. I mean, it's almost like they're just trying to, they're just paying lip service to these people. And the thing is, too, is that the border, these MS-13s, I mean, they check your shoes when you get onto a plane. I mean, you go onto a plane, they want you to take your shoes off.
Yes.
And yet these guys will waltz over a border, no checks whatsoever. I mean, regular citizens get checked over more flying interstate than these guys come in from overseas.
Well, they're checking what you're spending your money on. The federal government wants to know whether or not you're spending your money on what they refer to as religious texts. That's one of the demands that apparently they've been making without your knowledge. We're just finding out information about this. They're surveying whether or not you've made any expenditures related to Trump or MAGA. They're surveying, they're surveilling, that is, expenditures on things like Cabela's and Bass Pro Shops and these various sporting goods stores. The through line there is those places typically sell guns and things to support owning guns. And the Biden administration out of control. So you are being subjected, Jason, to way more scrutiny than any illegal immigrant is.
Oh, of course. I mean, and for me, and that's fine. But, for me, to pay the price for good security for your country, that's fine. But you know what? Everybody else goes through the same gate,
Yeah.
And get sprayed down while you're at
it. The TSA thing's a joke to begin with. We should get rid of.
It is.
We should get rid of having to walk through security to get to an airplane. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. And it's meant to. You know what it's meant to do? It's meant to demoralize and humiliate you.
It is.
It's the whole thing is an exercise in government brute force, and it doesn't stop anything. You know that every time they test TSA, they let all the weapons through. They the TSA, they'll do internal tests. They'll put a bunch of weapons on a conveyor belt. They'll flow right through like it's a Leslie Nielsen movie. Like it's like a complete joke. Like nobody, and then after that, we're all supposed to keep doing it.
I know. I was talking to an Israeli security guy the other day. He says, I don't know why they use all these machines and people. He says, all you need is a dog. The dog will do the work of 10 people. He says, they pick up on fear.
Yeah.
They pick up on drugs and they pick up on weapons. He says, you don't need any of these machines. You could cut the TSA out altogether.
Amen. And dogs don't have it out for you. Dogs are just great. So I'm for that. Yeah. Let's just do dogs. Forget the rest of that crap. The naked scanners can go. We can get rid of those. Jason, thank you very much.
Hey, thanks, mate.
I appreciate it. Make you take your belt off. Come on. This is so crazy. Remember the underwear bomber guy who thought that he had a big plan, and then all he did was blow his junk off? and then the rest of us had to suffer forever because of him? The whole thing's so nuts. All right, coming up on the program, the Biden administration definitely out of control. They've been spying on our financial institutions, on Americans' bank accounts, and looking for things like the purchase of religious texts, MAGA, and Trump. George Hill, the FBI whistleblower, will explain. That's ahead.